All right. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Sasha. I'm a marketing manager here at Witham. And thanks for joining us for our webinar where we will talk about navigating Microsoft Power BI licensing and embedding options. I know this can be a pretty confusing topic, so I'm excited for our data team to kind of dissect it all. I'll run through a couple of housekeeping items just real quick. We are recording the webinar. We'll try to keep it to about 40 to 45 minute session and leave plenty of room for questions. The slides and recording will be sent out to you hopefully by the end of today. And send in your questions. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please submit them in the questions pane of the GoToWebinar control panel. We will try to address all the questions at the end. If we don't get to your question, we will certainly be able to answer it by email. And with that, I have my data team with me here, Dale, John, and Katie. And Dale, if you're ready, kick off.
All righty. Thanks a lot, Sasha. Again, my name's Dale Tuttle. I'm a partner here at Witham Digital. I'm joined by two of our Power BI and data specialists. We have John Tate. Hi, John.
Good morning, everyone.
And Katie, I think you're on as well, correct?
Yep. Hi, everyone.
Excellent. All right, let's get going. This is actually a fairly complicated topic, surprisingly complicated, really. Power BI. So a little bit about what we do with Power BI. We have a whole data analytics team here at Witham Digital, and while we use lots of different tools, I think we tend to use Power BI probably the most because we have a ton of Office 365 customers. And one of the things that comes up all the time with our customers is, all right, how do I share my dashboards? How do I collaborate on the dashboard or the reports? And so that's where John and Katie and I got together and said, all right, well, let's do a webinar to discuss this because there's lots of different ways to do that. And that's what we're going to run through today. And let me see. All right, so Sasha already did the housekeeping stuff. So I just want to reiterate, one really important thing. Please feel free as we go forward to type in your questions. We'll log them. We'll keep them logged, and we'll address them. If we start to get a lot, we'll address them kind of as we go. But
yeah, we're happy to address things online, but we will save time at the end for Q&A. So if there's something we didn't cover, or if there's something you'd like us to expand upon and go into more detail, please let us know.
Yep.
We'll do it in line if we can. If not, we'll slide it into the end.
And you'll see that on the right-hand side of the collaboration box that's you should all see. So with that, why don't you go ahead and advance a little bit, John, and we'll start diving into the subject.
Look at you.
Hey, it's me again. Yeah, I know. It's still me. I do still like flying airplanes, so that's good news.
And I still like college basketball. So
why? You went to Syracuse.
There's things to like up there. It might be cold, but there's at least college basketball.
That's true. John is a huge college basketball fan. And speaking of huge college basketball fans, we have Katie. Hi, Katie.
Hi. Yep. Go Shockers. Love Kansas.
Yep. Katie traveled around to go to college basketball games, so she's one of our more committed fans along with John.
Even though I have a bracket.
Yeah. All right, so those are the intros. We're going to look a little bit at digital transformation, and then we're going to dive right into the Power BI licensing. We do have a few polls, too, I think. We have 3, right, today, John?
Yeah, just to get a kind of baseline about what people are looking at and what they're interested in.
Yeah, so you'll see that we'll get to those in a second, too. So why Power BI? And I know that John and Katie want to talk a little bit more about this. So Power BI fits into the digital revolution that's going on, right? We all know that devices are proliferating, and I guess 26 billion they're expecting. This includes your refrigerator, by the way. So that's where your refrigerator, your printers, all these things are now chatting on the internet, not to mention your Alexa device and all that sort of stuff. These things are coming online crazy in crazy numbers, and that's really generating a lot of data.
Tons and tons of data. There's more data generated every year than the previous decade, something like that, some ridiculous statistic. And what we're seeing with Power BI is that it really fits in nicely with all these other technologies that people have. That you've got web applications, you have these software as a service apps that you're subscribing to now instead of buying desktop software. And everyone's got databases and CRMs and files that are sitting around, and their vendors are sending them information, their clients are logging more information, and all these things are being put together. But getting them into one place and being able to visualize it and really do analysis on that data actually gets harder as you start adding more and more systems. And so we're really happy with Power BI's flexibility to kind of be agnostic to what systems you have underneath and what kind of data you're working with, and provide you with this very nimble and flexible tool for visualization, reporting, dashboarding, and sharing and collaboration on top of that too. And as we said, where do you put it, or how do you share it? How do you get it working in your organization? And then you have to do things like understand Microsoft licensing.
And so in fact, I'll give you a good example of that. John, Katie, and I were in New York last week doing a dashboard of the day. John and Katie taught it, not me. However, a lot of the people there were really good at Power BI, right? But they really didn't have an idea about how to share and how to collaborate and how to embed, if you will, the Power BI report. So while we already had planned on doing this webinar, it just confirmed that this is really kind of an important. We have a lot of people on the line today too, and it's also a lot of people have registered, so we know that this is a hot topic. So,
well, especially as Microsoft developed this platform originally, in 2012, Power BI is an extension for Excel, and they see more and more traction. They end up buying a company called Pyramid Analytics to expand out the platform, and since then we've gone from kind of this Excel add-on to a full-fledged ETL, data integration, data modeling platform with some machine learning capabilities and R integration and dynamic reports and dashboards with a full web service and reserved infrastructure capacity. And now there's a full on-prem option from Microsoft too. And so as this ecosystem gets bigger and bigger and encompasses more and more technologies, now it plugs into SharePoint and Power Apps and all these different things.
Right.
That navigating it gets a little bit more complicated. Before it was just a question of, oh, I want it, I buy it, kind of like Office 365. Oh, I need SharePoint online, okay, buy the thing that gives me SharePoint online. Now it's gotten a little bit more complicated. And organizations really have to start addressing what their needs are around not just analytics, but around Power BI specifically.
And we'll as we dive in here a little bit more, we'll probably get into a little bit how Power BI is working, but we're assuming most people know a little bit. But there is an architecture that I think we should talk about, at least briefly, John and Katie. So, John, why don't you start out?
We just wanted to give an overview, just make sure we're all kind of on the same page here, especially when it comes to terminology that we'll be using today. So when we talk about the desktop application, we're talking about the Power BI desktop publishing suite that you download from Microsoft. And as we'll talk about later, that's always free. Where things start getting a little bit more complicated is the Power BI service. Now that's your Office 365 application. You can access it at app.powerbi.com or through your waffle button, as we like to call it. And so your desktop application creates these kind of recipes that you publish to the service. The service then natively connects to all your connectors. I think at the time of this graphic, there were 50 plus. At this point, there's like 90 plus. It just keeps on growing. And from there, the service publishes out to your devices, back to your viewers, to laptops, to mobile devices, all those things, and even embedding. And so where it gets a little complicated then is how is it doing that? And is it doing it publicly? Is it doing it securely? Is it read-only? Can people create? Can they edit? Can they view? Who can control data sources? Things like that. That's where the licensing discussion comes in. So you've got this great package that can connect all this data, visualize it, and spit it out. But again, navigating of how it does it, where it does it, and whether it can do it securely is where the licensing discussion comes in.
And right now, this is probably the most common question we get because what we've seen in the last year is people have become more familiar with Power BI, even our customers. So our consulting now is transitioning from help with the tool to help with sharing, collaborating, and then as always, kind of on the data side. And then for advanced Power BI stuff, that's actually where Katie comes in. Katie's really, really good at the user interface side of Power BI.
Oh, so more connectors.
More connectors.
More connectors. More and more connectors. So let's start off with a poll. So one thing that we'd like to get a baseline on is, are you currently using Office 365? We'll talk about later about your options with Power BI outside of Office 365. But that really gives us a baseline for what kind of questions people might have, and what level of detail we should go into about Office 365 features.
Yeah, well, so go ahead, please start selecting, start participating, I should say, in the poll. We'll wait for a second or two, or a minute or two, sorry. And because this will help us kind of tailor our conversation. I think we have 3 polls, but since we're gathering data,
3 quick ones.
we're going to run it through deep Power BI analysis, I think.
I'm going to run some deep learning on it.
Deep learning, apply some AI. The AI will be Sasha and John, Katie, and I looking at the results. So that's your AI now.
I think I'm awake enough right now to be artificially intelligent.
I know.
Caffeine.
Yeah, we're caffeined up.
I think.
So we'll wait another minute or two. Go ahead, Sasha.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think most people answered this first one. So the majority of the people are using Office 365, and we can jump to the next one.
Awesome.
Okay.
That gives us a good baseline. See, every time I touch something in this, it takes me out of the slideshow. It's really getting finicky.
All right, so the next one is, are you using Power BI? So we've ascertained most people are using
Office 365.
Good. Are you currently using Power BI?
And when we say that, we do mean in any capacity. That some people are already using it, within a team or a department, or looking to scale up to their organization, or maybe they're looking to do more advanced things with it. So are you currently using it, or is this more of a scoping exercise for you?
Yep, thank you. And thanks again for participating. This really helps us shape our conversation today. Let us know when folks are done there, Sasha.
It looks like about 50% said they are, and then the other half is split between the no, but they plan to, and no. So I would say the majority are either are or planning to.
So again, I think that's pretty standard. So what that tells us is there's a lot of you that have Power BI, right? And it's part of your Office 365 subscription. We're not quite sure, how to get started with it. So that's, again, very, very good info. Did we have one more, Joe?
Yeah, there's one more.
All right, so this is more about folks that are actually actively using Power BI.
Or maybe our interested folks. So we get a lot of interest from people who aren't currently using Power BI that have heard that it's a good option for embedding, that people have information that they want to be displaying to clients or to third parties, things like that. Or they want more of a view-only kind of portal site type suite, where people can access data and view reports and dashboards, and that's where embedding comes in.
Right.
But again, that's more of a complicated question.
It is, and that's a lot of the meat today's discussion is how to do that, what the options are to do that. And as we've been saying, it actually can get fairly complicated, and that's what we're here to talk about. So, Sasha, are folks done yet?
Yes, we have an overwhelming response of yes, they are interested in embedding reports, which is great for this webinar, and then just a very slight percentage of maybe. So at least they're looking into it.
Okay, good. So we'll try to convince those folks that it's a good idea to do.
There's something with GoToMeeting. Every time we close a poll, it kicks me out of the slideshow.
Right. There's always something on every webinar.
That's good, because we do see a lot of interest in embedding, and as Dale said, that's where more and more of our focus is coming into advising people through that process.
Because now our customers, and I think probably from the data that we're getting now, people are starting to use Power BI, but that's the first level of maturity, right? You have to get familiar with the tool, maybe a small group of people that you're sharing data with, and also then what do you want to do? Then you want to start growing the community of people that you're sharing these reports with.
Especially external sharing too. We see a lot of interest in saying, this has been great, we're using this within my department, and we've got it working in Office 365 and it's integrated in Teams and things like that. But how do I get it out to my customers? How do I prove value, prove that we're doing things?
Yep.
So let's get into it, the meat of us. So Power BI licensing, why you're here today. So Power BI licensing, there's some kind of flavors. So what's free? People ask us this question a lot. What can I do for free? The good news is the Power BI desktop client is always free. So if you're an analyst, if you're a data scientist, if you're an Excel power user and you want to get into Power BI, go to powerbi.com and download the desktop client. It is always free, and they're constantly updating it. There is a new update pushed out every single month from Microsoft with new features, with bug fixes, new connectors, things like that. So Microsoft has invested in this tool. They're very actively developing it. This is not an, okay, I've got Excel 2016. Do I wait until Excel 2018 comes out? Things like that. This is no. Download it now. Get it today. Download the new updates every month. You will not be disappointed, and you also don't have to pay anything. It'll ask you to log in immediately when you open up the program, but you don't have to do that if you're not an Office 365 customer yet, and you just want to try it out.
And that's an important one. You don't have to be an Office 365 customer to kick the tires.
You don't have to be an Office 365 customer at all, in fact, to use any of these Power BI options, but we'll go into that a bit more later. On top of that, the Power BI service, that's the app.powerbi.com webpage. That's only to use by yourself. What Microsoft has done, it used to be that you could share a little bit within Power BI. You could send a report or dashboard directly to another user from the free service. However, just over a year ago, they cut that off and said, okay, we're really redefining how Power BI Pro works and how collaboration works and how it integrates with Office 365 and things like that. And they said, you know what, we're giving you all the features. So it used to be that there were some features that were restricted. Pro users could connect to on-premises data sources, for users couldn't, things like that. They said, you know what, we're going to give everyone the features for free, and what we're going to charge for is connectivity and collaboration. So if you want to work on reports with other people, if you want to use Office 365 groups or kind of the non-Office 365 equivalent of groups to distribute reports, anything that you've got in Power BI that you want to share with someone else, you need a subscription. And that's called Power BI Pro. Power BI Pro is the $9.99 per user per month.
And that's been holding steady at that price.
They have no intentions of changing that price at all. And so that gets you everything. That gets you collaboration, row-level security, all this great stuff. Lets you work with your Office 365 groups, and we could probably do an entire another webinar on Office 365 structuring and what if you create a team, does that create an Office 365 workspace for Power BI? If you create an Office 365 team site, does that create a workspace? That's a whole complicated relationship. But your Office 365 groups, you can create reports and share them directly with those in Power BI, but you need Power BI Pro to access that. If you try to access a group or try to access a report in a group that you don't have access to, it will pop up in Power BI saying, you need Power BI Pro.
So, John, can you talk a little bit more about the difference between the client and the service, though? We get a lot of questions about that.
So like we said, the desktop client is your data manipulation and access tool. That's where you can connect to data sources. It's where you can clean them, rearrange them in a tabular model, and then create advanced analytics expressions using DAX. Once you deploy things to the Power BI web service, you're kind of separated from the data cleaning and data ingest point of view. You can connect directly to some data sources that if you have a pre-cleaned Excel workbook or a CSV, you can load that directly into the web service, but you won't be able to create new columns, you won't be able to make analytics measures, things like that. All of that work is restricted to the desktop client. But again, that's free.
Right. Well, so our recommendation is that you go ahead and download the client.
Yeah,
right?
There's no reason to not download the client. There's no reason to not create, if you're not an Office 365 customer already, to not create a Power BI account. We do see people running into some troubles where their IT departments don't allow people to self-select into Power BI. Power BI is an application through Office 365, so a lot of organizations don't let people really add things to their accounts, just to slow down the spread and adoption of tools. Keep that under IT's umbrella. So you might have to ask an administrator to add it to your account, but they can add the free version for you. Also, when you sign up for Power BI, I think you can get access to a 60-day trial of Power BI Pro. So if you're trying it out as an organization, you can have a couple people grab a trial and see how the collaboration features work for you at no risk to you. So again, that's a subscription option. The next step up from that is where you start getting to the real enterprise side of Power BI, and that's called Power BI Premium. So once upon a time, a little over a year ago, there was two options for Power BI. There's Power BI Pro, and there's what they call Power BI Embedded. A whole BI ecosystem, two parallel platforms that Microsoft was running. One for the Power BI service, or you could log in and view reports at app.powerbi.com or through Office 365, and then Power BI Embedded, which was a system that allowed you to embed reports into web pages or applications. And they were not linked to each other in the slightest. They didn't share a common API. They didn't share anything in the back end, which was difficult. That meant that you couldn't easily transition reports that you were working on into embedding. It was expensive. It was a completely different licensing model because it was actually paid per impressions instead of subscription, which made cost forecasting difficult because if you had a traffic spike, for example, all of a sudden you'd be charged more. And people, they weren't too happy about that. Microsoft also wasn't too happy about it because it made resource planning for them difficult in terms of how much cloud capacity were they allocating to Power BI Embedded. So they switched over. So
when did the switch take place, John?
So they announced it effective May of 2017, and Power BI Premium went into effect June 1st of 2017.
So the reason I asked John that question is we know some of you are Power BI users. So if you've been using it before June of last year, there's been a change in how they do things.
Unless you were embedding before June of last year, you would have noticed no difference in terms of the services offered. If you were an embedding customer, you have probably been spammed with emails and notifications from Microsoft because they actually are deprecating that system. It is a legacy system at this point, and I think they gave 18 months from June 1st of last year. So I think at this point you're looking down the about 6-month barrel on that. So Power BI Premium is a whole new suite, and we'll go into details about this later, but it's more an enterprise focus that brings in the concepts of read-only users, and at that point you start paying a fixed price for reserved capacity to Power BI Cloud. So they're actually allocating you storage and processors and RAM to render reports and process information at a much higher price, but lets you scale down your per user cost. And again, we'll go into that deeper.
Right.
The other thing that they rolled out is Power BI Report Server, and that is an enterprise on-premises version of Power BI, which is actually part of the SQL Server Enterprise.
And this is a big deal.
This is a very big deal because for a lot of reasons, some people cannot use cloud services. We're in the DC area, so we interact with a lot of government and government-facing organizations that some of them cannot put their data in the cloud. Even though it's Microsoft, even though it's trusted, things like that, they are under regulations or corporate policy that they cannot put this data in the cloud, which prior to the release of Power BI Report Server would have made Power BI just not an option to them. So Microsoft has released Power BI Report Server. We'll go into a bit more detail about what you can and can't do in it and the restrictions around it, but it's an on-premises version of Power BI. It's actually a superset of SQL Server reporting services, and we'll talk a bit more about that, but you can do everything that you did in SSRS in Power BI Report Server to have one-stop shop for your on-premises reporting and analytics front end. And that actually has an interesting relationship with Power BI Premium as well. So Power BI Desktop, as we said, it's free to use from Microsoft. It's free as in, when people say free as in beer. You can download it, use it as much as you want. No restrictions, connect to as many data sources. Your only limitations are how much can you fit on your computer, how much RAM do you have in your computer. If you're trying to load 100 gigabytes of data into your computer that's only got 4 gigabytes of RAM, you're gonna have problems.
And you can do a lot of really sophisticated things with the desktop client.
Oh, even just by itself. It's a very good data exploration tool and data modeling application. It's actually, I refer to it sometimes as the Frankenstein monster of existing Microsoft technologies. That if you've been using Microsoft data tools for a while and you start playing with Power BI Desktop, you're going to start saying, oh, this looks familiar, this looks familiar. What you're really looking at under the hood is an amalgamation of what used to be called Power Query for Excel, Power Pivot for Excel, a light version of SQL Server analysis services for modeling, and it looks a little bit like Access databases and things like that as well, and SQL Server Core under the hood for data storage and compression to make the access and storage of the data actually more efficient under the hood.
And that's kind of from a data perspective. Katie, why don't you give us some, just a brief overview of some of the advanced things you can do from the UI perspective.
So Power BI, just to give a bit of best practice, I always do all of my work in Power BI desktop, and then I publish to the web service. This is where, with the desktop client, you are able to have a lot of different visuals. You're also able to pull in custom visualizations. It's just, you have more flexibility in terms, especially in terms of design, of being able to pull in images and various things like that in the desktop. That is one of the things you cannot do in the web service. But yeah,
as a best practice, Katie, isn't it? So as Katie said, it's best practice to use the desktop version. But Katie, also just, in 30 seconds or less, what are some of the more advanced UI things you do with the desktop client?
I do a lot with making it look pretty, making it
well, yeah.
making it usable for the end user, that it's logical, that it makes sense how you are. It's almost you want to tell a story with your data. And so with the report, I think in terms of storytelling and how to pull people through their data in the report.
And you can't do that with the web version as easily. So that, again, for Katie incorporates maps. She does all this great visual stuff that, frankly, we had no idea. We used the tool for a good year, and we just didn't realize the flexibility you have in the UI.
One of the big things of the desktop client is because you can edit measures and create new columns, that is a part of design too. That when you're thinking about the visualization of your data, sometimes you have to pivot some information or you need to create a new calculation. Right. And not having the flexibility to do that in the web interface can be a real limiting factor on what you can choose to visualize. And so if you were choosing to do your visualization on the web service front end, you might run into issues of not being able to create new things and not being able to manipulate your data to get it into position for visualization.
And as John pointed out earlier, there's updates to this pretty much monthly.
There is a monthly update. It doesn't always happen. It's not always 4 or 5 weeks. It's not the 15th of every month. Sometimes like I think it was the March update came on like the 27th of March or something like that they slipped it into the end. But they always get it this month. And if they don't, there's been a couple times that they've skipped an update, but that's usually because they were working on big things. I think, for example, the December 2016 update ended up canceling because they were rolling out some big features in January, and they said, you know what, let's not push a new update now, and let's wait for these features to be fully implemented. But they gave a lot of notice on that. So Power BI service. So okay, you created your reports in Power BI desktop, everything's looking great. You want to publish it up. You're talking about the Power BI service. So again, that's at app.powerbi.com. You can navigate it through there or from the waffle menu, as we like to call it, in Office 365. So there's 2 ways to use it. You've got your free use. So as we said, you can connect your data sources, you can publish to web, you can use the web-based features of being able to, for example, export a report to PowerPoint, which is a very useful thing that I like to do. It actually creates high-def images of all of your visualizations. It doesn't just take a screenshot of your report page. It takes a screenshot of all of your visualizations. So when it comes into PowerPoint, you can manipulate them. You can move them from being, on a slide with an entire report page to just pulling one visualization off and moving it to its own page, things like that. It's very flexible. It lets you export the underlying data behind visualizations to Excel or to CSV. All of that is available for free. Like we said, where you have to start getting the pro license is if you want to share and collaborate with team members. That is if you want to move things out of your personal My Workspace into a group workspace. And so to be able to take advantage of things like row-level security, which is implemented at the group level for reports. Or if you want to create apps for your organization that you control the reports, but you can publish it out to a wide audience without them requiring to be inside of a group, and to manage permissions that way, to allow people to self-select into reports.
And that's been $9.99 for a long time.
Yeah, Microsoft has no. So Microsoft is trying to be competitive. Some of their competitors in the space, Tableau, Click, for example, are all great products, but often come in at a much higher price point. Microsoft is really kind of undercutting the market to a degree here with a flexible tool that, quite frankly, just costs a lot less.
And your Microsoft rep can also offer discounts for not-for-profits, education, and government. So they usually pay a little bit less than that, right?
Yeah, we've seen people paying. I mean, when some of our nonprofit clients have told us how much they're paying per user for Power BI, we laughed and said, like, would you find that on the ground on the way to the building every day?
So they're very interested in rolling this out to those communities. So if you are a member of that community, and I know we have a bunch of people on today, make sure you explore that with your Microsoft rep. We can even help you if you want that.
One of the features for this too is if you have Pro, you can share reports externally with people who also have Pro licenses. So if I'm an Office 365 customer and I have a Pro and I create a report, and Dale is from another organization, he's from a client, and I create a report and I want to share it with him, as long as Dale has Pro as well, I can send the report to him and he'll be able to view it. If he does not have Pro, that doesn't work. If I don't have Pro, that doesn't work. But Pro-to-Pro sharing has been figured out. Pro also lets you create content packs, which again is this idea of creating a group of reports and dashboards that are all together that people can self-select into. So I don't have to say, okay, I'm going to share this report with everyone on the data team and go in and find their email addresses and share. I can say, okay, people that are in the data group in Office 365 can access this report. And if they want it, they can get this entire suite with 10 dashboards and 15 reports that are connecting to 20 different data sources. And they can pull that in for themselves and even edit and make adjustments to that without affecting everything in the rest of the group. It's a pretty powerful feature.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next step up from that is Power BI Premium. So Power BI Premium is Microsoft's enterprise solution for Power BI. What a lot of people run into at the $10 per user per month is they say, hey, most of our users just need to view reports. Right. They're not creating things. They're not editing things. They just want to be able to log in, see the data, and leave. They're never going to create a report. They're never going to connect to a new data source. In fact, we don't want them connecting to data sources. We don't want to give them credentials to our database. We don't want them to have API access to our CRM. We just want them to view information that someone who knows what they're doing has created.
They want to consume.
And we want to do it at scale. So we have 1,000 users. We have 10,000 users in our organization. We don't want to be paying $10 per month per user for every single one of them. Power BI Premium is Microsoft's answer to that. With Power BI Premium, instead of just getting your kind of paying for access to Power BI's cloud, you're actually getting your own slice of the Power BI cloud. So they have a couple different offerings that include more storage, more RAM, in order to serve more users. But the bottom line here is that you're getting dedicated capacity. In the past, people run into what we call noisy neighbor problems in Power BI, in the public Power BI cloud, I should say, the Power BI Pro cloud. If I am running a data ingest against a huge data source, say some big data application like Google BigQuery, Redshift, or some big Hadoop data warehouse, and I'm consuming gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of information, that's fine. Power BI Cloud will handle that. But what you can run into is that somebody who's on the same node as me all of a sudden is going to see much reduced performance because their reports sit on the same node as I am, and I'm consuming all of the capacity in the node.
Right.
Power BI Premium makes you never a victim of that problem because all the capacity is 100% reserved for you 100% of the time.
So capacity performance, if you will, is dedicated to you in that little part of their cloud.
Exactly. So they can guarantee data processing and data visualization, rendering reports up to a certain number of views per hour or a certain number of gigabytes processed per minute, things like that.
These are for
these are enterprises. So this starts, please look here, minimum cost is $5,005 per month. So Power BI Premium P1 tier, the first Power BI Premium tier, starts at $4,995 per month. Additionally, you need to have Pro users are the admins and report creators for this. So minimally, you need one Power BI Pro license in order to administer and create reports in your premium environment. So minimally, you're talking $5,005 per month. So $4,995 plus $10 per month.
Yep.
So this is very much an enterprise solution. As you can see, with the $10 per month, 5,000 people, we'll talk about the inflection points and where it starts being cost effective. But minimally, you're talking about 500 users to start seeing a savings.
Pro users.
Yeah, pro users to start seeing a savings on Power BI Premium. We often see people, and we'll get into this more too, that you have a lot more than one pro user.
Yeah.
But again, so this is designed for larger organizations. The other factor here is Power BI Report Server, and we get a lot of questions about this. So this is part of the SQL Server Enterprise package. If you have SQL Server Enterprise with SA, you can get Power BI Report Server for free. It is a one-to-one core relationship with your SQL Server Enterprise license. I'll say that again. If you are using SQL Server Enterprise, if you are an SSRS user, if you are using analysis services, if you are using integration services already, if you have those, then you are already licensed you are highly likely that you are already licensed for Power BI Report Server, and you can use that on-prem. Again, that is a superset of SQL Server reporting services. So instead of having, say you're already an SSRS user and you've got all these paginated reports that get made every day and sent out, automatically emailed, and you want to keep that, but also add dynamic dashboards to that, also add interactive reports. They have put SSRS under the umbrella of Power BI Report Server so that all of your reporting ends up in the same place. So you can uninstall your SSRS server and replace it with Power BI Report Server, lose no functionality on Report Server, and add all the Power BI functionality as well.
So again, this would be on-premises.
This is on-premises.
Yep.
And if you're doing that fully on-prem, it's not connecting to the cloud at all, then you are already licensed for it, most likely. And a lot of people are really happy to hear that, because it can get complicated. Where it does get complicated is if you want to use it in a hybrid scenario with the cloud. So if you have on-premise reports that you want people to access from the cloud, or vice versa, have cloud reports that you want people to access from on-premise. So through a single URL that they can visit to get to your internal reporting server.
Right.
That's where you have to have Power BI Premium. So in order to have that hybrid environment, then you have to have a Power BI Premium subscription in the cloud, as well as your Power BI Report Server on-prem. And again, as we go back to the previous slide, that starts at $5,000 approximately per month.
Right, right.
But that could be this hybrid environment where people can access on-premises reports from the cloud, access cloud reports from on-prem, and really transition. For large organizations, we see a lot of interest in this because it gives you a lot of flexibility between data access and where data processing is occurring. If it's okay to have data in the cloud, but you don't want to be sharing the raw information with the cloud, you want it to be processed on premises, but have people be able to see the reports.
You push it out. Yep.
That is a very good solution for that, especially when you have thousands of view only.
Right, and so, and again, what's the profile for a customer that would be interested in this? A lot of international firms use this, or anyone who's geographically dispersed, right? You have large operations in different parts of the country, or maybe different parts of the world. This is a solution that they frequently adopt.
So due to Microsoft, as we said before, they're updating the desktop and web client every single month. They like to get that information into those features into the report server, but that can be difficult. So what they've done is they've committed to 3 updates per year, and they're going to support each of those for a year after they're released. And with that, they release a version of the desktop client that is feature locked to the report server release at any given time. So if they release, they just released a March version of report server, there's a March report server version of the Power BI desktop client that only includes the features that are included in the report server as of that date, so that you're never producing something that's going to be incompatible. So Power BI Premium, when do you choose Pro versus Premium? We've got this handy little graph on the side. As you can see, Pro scales linearly. Every single user is going to cost you the same amount each. Power BI Premium at its base rate of 5,000 is always going to be 5,000 for no matter how many users you're adding. What we see a lot is people using about 10% of their users are Pro. So if you have 500 users, we're saying, hey, you're probably going to have about 50 Pro users in your organization. Those are people that want to create reports, edit reports, use the mobile application, things like that. And that's where we see that inflection point. If we start looking at the cost per user, again, over 500 is where we see, and even with pro users, starting to beat out Power BI Pro for cost. So as you start scaling up, especially with the idea that large organizations are going to have more and more and more view-only, read-only users,
right.
Power BI Premium starts making a lot of sense, especially once you start getting that 750, 1,000 total users.
Yeah.
At that point, you're paying $5, $6 per user per month.
We'd have a lot of consumers of the data.
Mm-hmm. So Power BI embedding, this is always kind of the elephant in the room too, of, okay, I want to embed my reports into my website. I want to embed them into my application. We see a lot of, I've encountered it all the time, where I'll be checking out a new software as a service web application, and I go to their analytics tab, and I see a graphic, and I go, I know where that graphic comes from. I'm looking at Power BI embedded. And sure enough, if I open up the back end and start looking at the code, that they're making a call to the Power BI cloud. More and more organizations are seeing this as an effective way to deliver interactive analytics and data reporting to their customers and to their clients from within their website, from within their application, and do it effectively at cost. So what are your options for embedding? So you can publicly embed to the Power BI service. This means you can embed a quick chart or a quick report that you make into a blog or something like that without having to engage any infrastructure. So this is not secured. It's public to anyone. You get a long 25-character GUID that, the unique identifier for your report, but if anyone randomly guesses that GUID, they can see your data. So this is public.
But John, tell us a little bit more. If the public can see it, can they interact with it? What kind of features do they get?
They can interact with it. Anything that a view-only user could do, they can do.
Got it.
But again, it's public. I'll say, I keep hitting this. It is public. Your data is publicly accessible if you share it through the Power BI service without any of the pro or embedded embedding restrictions.
Got it.
Again, and also if it's heavily trafficked, Microsoft will shut it down. So if I'm a Fortune 500 company and I plop this up on the front page of my website with a publicly shared link, Microsoft is going to say, hey, you're getting 1,000 hits per minute to this, we're shutting it down.
Right, so that's a key feature for you larger organizations, is that if you're going to put up something for mass consumption, Microsoft won't let you do that.
Because they're not going to foot the bill for your traffic. So then you start looking at Power BI Pro embedding. So this is really designed for internal collaboration and sharing within organizations. If you're using SharePoint Online, or if you're using Teams, things like that, this is how you can share Power BI reports and dashboards within your organization on those platforms. The restriction here is that the only people that can view those reports are other people with Power BI Pro. So if I use Power BI Pro embedding SharePoint Online, people have to be a member of the group and have a Power BI Pro subscription in order to view that report when they get to that page. Otherwise, it gives them a blank box.
And this is how...
Same thing with Teams.
Yep, and this is how Witham does it. This is how we share the data that Katie and John not only do they help customers, but we have internal customers. We're about 1,000 people firm, and so Katie in particular spends a lot of time doing Power BI reports on various internal metrics, and we need to share those out with other people who are geographically dispersed. So this is how we do it.
So then the big one, and this is what we get the most questions about, is embedding with Power BI Premium. So this is when you want to securely embed reports, dashboards, or dashboard tiles into a website or application. And this means getting capacity within Microsoft's cloud. So what are your options then? Again, here's an example of free embedding. Simply dropping into a blog, it gives you a nice little iframe with your report. But again, this is public. There's no security. And again, what we like to hit on this is that it's not responsive. Power BI reports are designed on a fixed pixel basis. So your reports don't change with how big the viewing environment is.
And that's a big one.
That is a big one.
Yep.
Power BI Pro lets you share within Teams or within SharePoint Online, again, but to other pro users. And it's also not responsive. We keep hammering that. So the big one is Power BI Premium embedding. So you can embed from Power BI Premium at $5,000 a month. You can also cut that down. So this gives you secure embedding using token-based authentication through Azure and through Active Directory. Server-side security trimming so that the data that's being sent to the embedded page is not the full set of data, but only the data that people are restricted to see. And they've also released lower price SKUs for embedding only implementations. Because originally when they released this, the community freaked out because a lot of people were embedding already at a consumption basis.
Right.
So if you were looking at 1,000 hits per month at about $5 per every 1,000, you had a pretty low bill coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden Microsoft was saying, we're going to take you from paying a couple $100 a month for embedding reports to your clients to minimum of $5,000. And people freaked out.
They sure did, and actually, I'll tell the story, John. I had a customer when all this changed. He had just finished up a bunch of reports, and the customer was super happy, especially with the price point they're obtaining. And this announcement came out and caused a problem.
Yeah, they were looking at paying roughly about $1,000 per month in traffic-related costs, and so then they were looking at 500% more per month to get the same thing. So Microsoft heard the community and they've released lower SKUs just for embedding purposes, available through Office 365 and Azure. So as you can see, this is the Azure pricing model. So you can get it through Office 365 or Azure. The big difference between them is with Office 365, you're talking about monthly pricing with yearly commitments, versus Azure, you're talking about per hour pricing. So if I want to run Power BI embedding for 6 hours a day only on my website, I can do that through Azure, and I will only pay for the hours that my servers were active. If I do it through Office 365, I'm paying a full cost for the month and I'm agreeing to do it for a year. So as you'll see, the monthly prices through Office 365 are slightly less, mostly because you're talking about the reserves and you're getting a slight cost decrease for that kind of yearly commitment. But the big thing to consider here with embedding is this peak renders per hour number. That when you're looking at embedding tiers, you're looking at how many people am I going to be serving reports to on an hourly basis, and what's the maximum I'm going to be hitting. The advantage of Azure is that you can use the same functionality you do with VMs and things like that to scale up your capacity. So that you could, if you're normally getting about 400 users in an hour, but suddenly you start spiking up, you can put business logic in Azure to have you scale up to, say, 1,200 renders per hour.
And either way, it just so happens you can buy this through with them, right? So we have a lot of customers who we actually purchase this for them.
Mm-hmm. We fully manage their embedding for them and the scaling and things like that. So through Office 365, there's slightly less options. There are 3 tiers, the EM 1, 2, and 3. These are yearly commitments. So you can see the prices for the peak renders per hour are slightly less. I threw in the premium tiers too, so you can embed through the premium tiers as well. But again, these are really targeted at those view-only users within your system. So the EM3, there's a part of your P3 that encompasses the power of an EM3 license, as you can see.
So what we do, and as you can tell, John's an expert in this. We have customers that we help walk them through this. So if you're on the line and we'll help you walk through what your organization needs to be cost effective. Okay, so it's a big deal because while Power BI is cost effective, you need to find the best way to share with the licensing options that are available, and that's frankly it's complicated. Mm-hmm. And that's where John, Katie, and I can help walk you through what do we need to share. We did, like I said, we did what we call Dashboard in a Day in New York last week. We have a Dashboard in a Day tomorrow in Reston, and this will be a topic, right? Because what will happen, we'll get a lot of people who really know how to use Power BI. They don't know how to share. They don't know what their options are.
Yeah, the biggest thing that we get is people saying, okay, I've decided to embed. What does that mean? What does that require? And so when we walk people through that decision, the first step is Azure or Office 365. What are you looking to do? And what that often comes down to is a question of who is managing the project within your company. That is IT managing it? Are your developers managing that? Who controls it and who's making the call?
Yep.
And so if it's IT, we're often seeing that's through Office 365 because they want the cost control. They want to know that the bill is coming in at, $1,300 per month every single month, and it is what it is. Versus if you're developers, if it's more application implementation, they might be more comfortable doing it through Azure and dealing with servers and dealing with spinning things up and shutting things down and scaling, and per hour pricing, dealing more with costs on kind of how much do we need it rather than trying to have things fixed.
Yeah, and we have a managed data service where we actually can get all the stuff through us, and we'll simplify it for you. Sasha, do you want to start entertaining questions? I know we're running out of time.
We are. We can. I think 10 minutes is good. So let me see what we have here. Someone's asking, if I have a 32-bit version of Office 365 installed, must I use the 32-bit version of Power BI Desktop?
Yes. So there is a 32-bit version of Power BI Desktop available, as you said. You can, if your computer can use the 64-bit, that's more comes down to, like I said, what computer you're using than what other software you have installed. The Power BI Cloud will accept the 30 reports from the 32-bit or 64-bit. Often what that can come down to is a question about what data sources you're using. Where I often see that is with people using older SQL connections, older ODBC connections that are 32-bit connectors. So they have to use the 32-bit Power BI client to connect to 32-bit connectors. But you should be, either way, you should be fine. They have the same features. They both connect to the Power BI service. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thanks. Let's see. I have a Power BI Pro license. Can I share my reports with my staff in a website without them having a Pro license?
That's a common question that we get, and the answer is generally no, unless you want that data to be publicly available.
Right. That's the caveat.
If you don't mind it being publicly available, if you're like, great, someone knows that Dale was our #1 plate stacker.
I'm #1?
Last month. You were #1. I didn't tell you. If you're cool with people knowing that, then you can use the iframe-based embedding to embed that in a website, like an internal blog or internal SharePoint site, something like that. Otherwise, yes, they do need Power BI Pro. That's the big kind of wall that Microsoft has put up. That if you want to share your reports with other people, you got to pay for it.
Got it.
Hey, Sasha,
Yep.
One that I just saw is, again, just someone wanted to reiterate something. Do I need Office 365?
Yep.
So you do not need Office 365 to use Power BI. You can purchase Power BI Pro without an Office 365 subscription, and you can share and collaborate, all of that stuff. It is really advantageous to use Office 365 along with it, but the costs are the same. This is licensed and paid for independently from all of your other Office 365 features like Excel Online, SharePoint Online, PowerPoint Online, OneDrive. All of the Office 365 suite is fully separate from Power BI. So we have plenty of customers that are not Office 365 customers. They use G Suite for all of their email and document sharing and Google Docs, all that stuff, and then they use Power BI for analytics.
And another one where someone wanted clarification. John, do I embed through? I'm going to reinterpret this. Do I embed through Azure or Office 365? What's the difference?
Fundamentally, in terms of how you'll have to develop your reports and share them, there is no difference. It mostly comes down to the question of auto scaling, which you can do through Azure, because you can say, hey, I'm at an A2 for 24 hours a day, and during the 6 hours a day where we see more traffic, we're going to scale up to an A3 license. You can do that through Azure. You cannot do that through Office 365. The other thing is commitment. Office 365 are monthly pricing with a year commitment. So while your monthly price might be $650 per month, you are agreeing to pay that every month for a year to Microsoft. Right. And that's why you're getting a slight cost decrease. Through Azure, if you just want to try this for a little bit, and we see people do that a bunch too, that they'll do their initial implementation through Azure, see if they're happy with it, and once they're good, then they'll often purchase a larger view, but through Office 365.
So if you're not sure, do the Azure route.
Yeah, then you're not locked in for a year.
Yeah, exactly.
From a developer standpoint, you're still doing token-based authentication to Active Directory, to Azure Active Directory on either side, whether that's Azure Active Directory as managed through Office 365 or directly through the Azure portal. It's kind of fundamentally the same thing.
All right, Sasha, you have a couple more at least, right?
Yes, just a couple. Does Power BI Pro allow sharing a report with another pro user with limited edit capability?
With limited edit capability. I believe when you share a report with another pro user, it goes to their My Workspace, which gives them the ability to edit it. But I think that there is
good question.
An edit only. I think especially with an external user. So if you're talking about an external user, I believe they get an edit only. Internally, what you would want to do is actually put it into a workspace. So create a new workspace, put the report in the workspace, and then set the workspace to be members can only view. That way, even though they're a pro user, when they see a report in that workspace, if they're only a member and not an admin of the group, then they can only view the report and they get that read-only access.
Will security trimming always be in place internally?
Internally, security trimming is done at a report level. And only to view-only users. So if you are an admin, you will not get security trimmed because inherently by being able to edit the report and change fields and things like that, you have access to all the underlying information. Yeah. If you are concerned about, you want users to have editing capabilities, but also receive security trimming, then you're talking about doing the security trimming on the data processing side. And so that's when you just want to start looking at things like SQL Server analysis services and doing the trimming based on credentials on that side. So users are only getting fed the data they should see before they edit and create visuals.
Great question, actually. Good one. Sasha, you had another one.
Yes, and this one kind of piggybacks back to the reports from one workspace to another. Someone was asking, what are the options for moving the reports from one workspace to another, from a government tenant to a commercial tenant?
Gotcha. So moving reports around within Power BI can be a little frustrating. What you want to do is download the PBIX file. So if you have edit capabilities on a report and you're a pro user, you should, or not pro user even, in a workspace, if you go to the file menu, there should be an option to download the .pbix file. So Power BI creates everything in these self-contained report files. It includes your data, it includes your connections, it includes your security trimming. All of that is contained. Your visualizations is all in that PBIX file. So when you download that, you're actually getting everything that's going along with that report. So you can then move that to, you download it and then re-upload it into the workspace that you would like it. Unfortunately, dashboards are a little bit more complicated. You might have to recreate your dashboard that was feeding off of those reports in the new workspace.
Got it. And then I just have time for one more. If we're using report server for on-premises, can we embed? And then what does report server on-premises cost?
Sure. So like we said, cost is an interesting question with report server. If you're fully on-prem, likely you can get it one-to-one with your SQL Server Enterprise licensing. If you do not have SQL Server Enterprise, then that is your cost. And there's per core SQL Server Enterprise for education, government, and commercial, things like that. You can embed from that. So it's the same way that you can embed SSRS reports and things like that. You can iframe embed, Power BI report server reports. You can use security trimming. You can use query-based filtering, so you can click a link and have it pass a filter. And you can do a lot of very cool things with your on-premises environment.
All right, and Sasha, I think that takes us right to the wire.
Yes.
Right? We were just trying to get.
Just
so I think we're good.
Yep.
Well, listen, I'd like to thank everyone. We had quite a few people on the line today. Thank you for submitting your questions. We know it's a complicated subject. Thank you, John, and thank you to admittedly a little bit under the weather, Katie. She was kind enough to be on the line with us, but not feeling great. So we are done, but Sasha, we do encourage folks to get in touch. We can help you work through this stuff, and we look forward to receiving additional questions should you have any.
Yep.
Thanks, John.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Katie.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.